Hello, this is Gray Hughes of Gray Hughes Investigates on YouTube. As you remember, yesterday we discussed the missing time from the 1122 King Road residence to where the phone pinged. So I believe the phone pinged right around in this area, and that was at 4:48 according to the probable cause document. However, you would be there at 4:32 a.m. just driving at a normal rate. So there's missing time. Again, I'll say like 13 to 16, 18 minutes of missing time. An individual named Richard sent me an email and suggested maybe they drove this direction. We were showing this part yesterday on the live stream, maybe going down into here and going around. Maybe that's actually another way, right? Like he could have driven like this and down here. And look at that's Blaine, Idaho. And then maybe came out down like this and across. They suggested a further route where you drove all the way around like this and around and perhaps ditched an item in this area, and then there's Blaine, and then came clear down here and then got back onto 95, and then on the drawn map that's on the probable cause likely went this direction and down and around and then just north of Uniontown and then back up. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Thanks for sending that, Richard. But now just looking at this right here, you can see other routes coming down like that. And then you're in that wooded area. And then you go right to Blaine. And then perhaps cut across, come down, and then you turn your phone on. I'll have to figure out how much time that might take right there. So we might have to do another show where people can call in and give their theories, but have everything organized where you tell me, I think he might have gone here, 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 and we map it out together and we figured it out, okay? So today's video, though, is going to be about what happened after he got back to Pullman, Washington. So we know, based on what we were talking about in other videos, is that the car pulls up here at 5:25, the white Elantra with Bryan Kohberger in it, suspect vehicle 1, and pulls up this direction, and at 5:30 the phone turns on, and then we don't hear anything from him. So this is something I mentioned yesterday in my video, and now I see it's actually mentioned in here too. It says, based on my training and experience and the facts of this investigation thus far, I believe that Kohberger, the user of the 8458 phone, was likely the driver of the white Elantra that is observed departing Pullman, Washington, and that this vehicle is likely suspect vehicle 1. Additionally, the route of travel of the 8458 phone during the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, and the lack of 8458's phone, that's actually Kohberger's phone, reporting to AT&T between 2:47, remember that's when he turned the phone off in Pullman, and 4:48 a.m., which is when it turned on near Blaine, is consistent with Kohberger attempting to conceal his location during the quadruple homicide that occurred at the King Road residence. This is in the probable cause document. I hadn't remembered seeing it in there, but that's exactly the same time frame where I suggested the murder happens in there, and that's exactly when his phone is turned off. All right? And so let's get started on this information. What happened after 5:30? Further review indicated that 8458's phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th. So they use this CAS system, and it gathers all the different pings that a phone might make off of cell towers and tries to determine the direction and track a phone using this system. So it says further review indicated that Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th, 2022 that are consistent with his phone leaving the area of Kohberger's residence at approximately 9 a.m. and traveling to Moscow, Idaho. Specifically, Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to King Road residents between 9:12 and 9:21 a.m. So when you go look at the map here, there's a cell tower right here. They have it listed there. I can't find it, but I see a mound there, so I don't know if they've put one in since this was this map was created. I don't know. There is also another tower right here. So as soon as Kohberger's car would drive in this area, perhaps individuals living here and his phone will be using that same cell tower. Now there's another one listed here on top of this water tower, and then there's also an antenna listed on the water tower across from this one right here, across from Sigma Chi and close to the residence, but I don't know if that's a cell tower or not. And it's actually another one right here at the resident right there of the university. So as we were reading, it says between 9:12 and 9:21 a.m. it was still utilizing those resources. So I can imagine a scenario where he's driving and then this cell tower picks up his phone at 9:12, but maybe he's even just still right there, and then he pulls in, he drives by the residence, comes back out, and then 9:21 when he's leaving, it pings again near there, and then he drives back. And it doesn't say it just pinged at those times. It means it was actively utilizing the cell tower resources. So maybe when he came this direction right here, it started utilizing that tower. It shifted over to that tower, and then he was down in this area, and then he drove back up this way, and it continued to use that tower. So as he's driving, he would lose contact with that tower and then start utilizing a tower in Pullman, Washington, as that tower picked it up. So what we're seeing here is that at 9:12 a.m. and 9:21, it was utilizing that tower for that 9-minute period, and then it started utilizing another tower at 9:32 a.m. back in Pullman, Washington. And it continues on saying, specifically, the Kohberger phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to King Road residents between 9:12 and 9:21. Kohberger's phone next utilized cellular resources that are consistent with Kohberger's phone traveling back to the area of Kohberger's residence and arriving to the area at approximately 9:32 a.m. So the time frame works. So let's say Kohberger leaves his house and then he turns his phone on and then he's driving, and then finally when he gets into this area it's 9:12 and this tower picks up and starts utilizing his phone, and for I guess it's 9 minutes his phone is using that tower because he drove in, just did a quick loop, and then got the hell out of there and drove this way. It's also possible he drove on this road right here, right? I mean, he could have easily came down like this. Maybe he wasn't on 270, drove on, and then right here, cut across. Let's see, what's the name of that? That road right there. It is Old Moscow Road. So he drives like this, goes on Old Moscow Road, and he's back here utilizing these resources, comes around, maybe even does sort of a Walanta Drive maneuver, and comes back out again, don't really know, and then drives this direction, and then he's over here, and then eventually makes his way back into Pullman, Washington. This is just speculation on my part. I think Bryan Kohberger went there in the morning to check out his handiwork. He was disappointed to see that there were no police officers and there's no people gathering around. He wanted to feel the thrill of seeing the reaction to what he had just done, and it didn't happen. So he went home. The probable cause continued and said, further analysis of the cellular data provided showed Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources on November 13th, 2022, the same day of the homicides, consistent with his phone traveling from Pullman, Washington to Lewiston, Idaho via Highway 195. At approximately 12:36 p.m., Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand located at 810 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington. So what they're saying is he left Pullman here, drove down, and then got on the Highway 195, headed all the way down, and goes into Lewiston, Washington here, then crossed this bridge, and then went to Kate's Cup of Joe's right here. So this is where Kate's Cup of Joe is. That's where his cell phone is. Kohberger's phone is right there. So for all the people who think maybe a homing pigeon was carrying his phone around, his phone pinged right there. And then it says, at approximately 12:36 p.m., Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that would provide coverage to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand located at 810 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington. It further went on to say, surveillance footage from the U.S. Chef store located at 820 Port Drive, Clarkston, Washington, adjacent to Kate's Cup of Joe, showed a white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 driving past Kate's Cup of Joe at a time consistent with the cellular data from Kohberger's phone. So it was 12:36, and a camera from the food chef store right here at 12:36 filmed a white Elantra at the exact same moment that Kate's Cup of Joe connected with Bryan Kohberger's phone. So we now have Bryan Kohberger's phone and the food chef store here filming a white Elantra that matches suspect vehicle 1, which matches the type of vehicle that Bryan Kohberger drives, and Bryan Kohberger's phone, apparently flown there by a carrier pigeon hovering above the white Elantra, was right here. So now we've linked the white Elantra, the suspect vehicle, with the cell phone directly. Then, after that, at approximately 12:46 p.m., Kohberger's phone then utilizes cellular data in the area of Albertson's grocery store at 400 Bridge Street in Clarkston, Washington. Surveillance footage obtained from the Albertsons showed Kohberger exit the white Elantra consistent with suspect vehicle 1 at approximately 12:49 p.m. Interior surveillance cameras showed Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout, and leave at approximately 1:04 p.m. So again, a white Elantra consistent with Kohberger's white Elantra and suspect vehicle 1 is seen at approximately 1:49 p.m. The interior surveillance cameras show Kohberger walk through the store, purchase unknown items at the checkout. Uh-oh, everybody. That pigeon theory isn't looking as likely now. It looks like Bryan Kohberger himself had his cell phone with him in his own white Elantra. So the suspect vehicle 1 and Bryan Kohberger's cell phone and Bryan Kohberger himself are all connected at this point in the same location. So he pulls into the, let me go over to the Albertsons, which is, they got that, and the Albertsons is right here. He drives down, pulls in, 12:46, 12:49, and then he enters into the store, buys unknown items. I'm sure they know exactly what he purchased at this point. And then he exits, and then he gets back into his vehicle at 1:04. And then he sort of disappears for 4 hours or so. Additional analysis of records of Kohberger's phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 p.m. and 5:36 p.m., the Kohberger phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Washington. Gray, how come you keep saying Kohberger's phone when it's really 8458? Well, they've determined that 8458 is Kohberger's phone, so there's really no difference at all. That is Kohberger's phone, right? There's no doubt about it that that's Kohberger's phone. So I think that's what the probable cause document should actually say, not the 8458, because it is Kohberger's phone. Whether or not you believe somebody else was carrying it is irrelevant. That is Kohberger's phone. Additional analysis of records for Kohberger's phone indicated that between approximately 5:32 and 5:36, Kohberger's phone utilized cellular resources that provide coverage to Johnson, Washington. Originally it said Idaho accidentally, and then they fixed that. I remember that. Kohberger's phone then stops reporting to the network from 5:36 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. That is consistent with Kohberger's phone being in the area that Kohberger's phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. And let me just tell you, it's not a suspected time. The homicides took place between 4:08 and 4:20, and there is no doubt about it. So what that means is his cell phone pinged near Johnson, Washington. Here's Johnson, Washington right here, but there's a cell tower right there. So he turns it on for 4 minutes in this period of time, and it was utilizing these resources. And so if you consider that there's usually about a 3 to 5 mile radius, and you're driving, let's say you're driving 60 miles an hour, 4 minutes would only take up, if you happen to turn it on 2 miles prior and then drove 2 extra miles, that'd be the 4 minutes, but you're not outside the radius. So that means his phone was off, turned on, and then off again. Unless there's a hilly area and he just lost connection. But it is interesting, right? If you look at what we were talking about yesterday, where his phone pinged near Blaine, Idaho, and then near Johnson, Washington. So let's take a look and see how far Johnson, Washington is from Blaine. And this is pretty interesting. So you go Johnson, and then Blaine, and let's get the measurement there. That's only 9 miles total distance there. And there's a cell tower way up here on this butte right there. So is it possible that he's in this area, somewhere in there, because that might be a place where you could overlap. He turns his phone on in this area because he was just somewhere down here but wants to go out this direction and around. It's hard to say. It's really interesting though, when you think about how Blaine and Johnson are kind of at the same height on a map almost. These rings are 3 miles, so there's 3 and then 3 from there. But if you take if this is the cell tower that picked up his ping, then now you're overlapping way over here. And perhaps he wasn't even on 195 and it was just this tower right there. Look, it's way up in the air, so it would reach over there. I mean, that's really interesting. Look at that. So that tower might reach a cell phone if it was over in this area, for example, and it would just happen to pick up that tower. I mean, it would be even more likely since it's right there. So that is interesting, and it's near Johnson, Washington. It doesn't necessarily have to be this one. It could mean that he turned his phone on right when he's driving by that tower, but when you look at, there's a tower on Bald Butte here. What do you guys think? Leave a comment in the comment section. I mean, it's starting to look, I have this circled over here as a possible spot, but now when you consider that, let's do another circle here and see where this overlaps at. So that's 3 miles right there. Wow, it's right inside that circle I had. Okay, so let's hit that, let's make that a little thicker. And there you go. Look at that craziness. And since he turned it on near Blaine, is it possible he's right in this area here? And then when he went back, he just happened to be a little closer to Bald Butte, just happened to pick it up. And that's right near Johnson, Washington. Who knows, everybody? It's pretty crazy, but there is a lot of missing time between, 104 and 532. And then 536, we know where he is because it's pinging near Johnson, Washington between 532 and 536. So it doesn't turn on again until 8:30 p.m. And it says that is consistent with Kohberger's phone being in the area, that his phone traveled in the hours immediately following the suspected time the homicides occurred. So that's an interesting statement how they word that, because now you've got this overlap here if you use the Bald Butte cell tower and connect that to Johnson. He could be right in there. Pretty wild, you guys. So that's it for this episode. There's literally millions of different variations of roads you can take. Turn here, go over there, take this direction. And it could add up to certain time frames. I mean, somebody said that there's this other route you can drive that takes exactly 3 or almost 4 hours to get from down here to there, but I wasn't able to find what they were showing me on a map. I appreciate everybody sending me the emails and showing me what they think the route might be and different locations, etc. It's pretty interesting. I think if we all put our heads together on something like this, we might be able to determine where Bryan Kohberger stashed the bloody knife and the bloody clothing, if in fact he did that. It's possible he just took a really long route here and then came out at 448 right here. But I think he stashed something, and that's why his phone turned on for that brief amount of time from 5:32 to 5:36, because I think it's also possible then that he went to go find it again to collect it and then move it, and then finding it is sort of a moot point. You wouldn't really be able to find it because he moved it somewhere else, and this time likely he kept his phone off the entire time. Alright, so thank you all very much for watching this episode. If you could leave a comment in the comment section, let me know what you think. And I always appreciate if you hit the like button. And if you want to join my channel, that would be awesome too. I do shows every single night, a live stream, and I'm making more videos now. And it'd be great to have more people watching and listening and joining in on rational true crime talk instead of crazy conspiracy nutter stuff that literally has no chance of being true. So when the trial happens, and when your favorite wackos out there are giving you the craziest ideas you've ever seen, and it turns out none of the things they are saying are true, I hope that you show them what you feel when the reality takes place. Okay? There is no ghosts and goblins, no crazy Brent Kopaka connection with the CIA covering it up because they want it. None of that stuff is real. If you stick with the factual information in the case, you easily see that Bryan Kohberger is the killer in this case. What I don't understand is why so many people want to see a killer free. It's absolutely incredible. So thank you everybody for watching. And as I always say, until next time, be safe out there. Oh, and can you hit that like button? Thanks.